Yeah, one tells the truth, one lies, but we gotta figure out which door is safe and which isn't. Heard it all. What color is the ground here? This. What color is this? He tapped his foot on the ground. Are they allowed to do that? One door asked the other. I'm not sure. It's been so long since anyone's been here, I forget all the rules. The door on the left mentioned as Steve pointed. Gotcha, you're the truth-speaking door. Which door is the safe one? He figured the liar door would for sure have an answer, but only the truth door would admit to being unsure. Neither of us. The door replied, and Steve grinned. Clever. So it's... He studied the wall for a moment and then rushed over to push on a flat section of rock that bore the symbol of Vauclair. After a moment, the wall slowly ground forward to reveal another door which they rushed into. Right, Larry, you've got this next trap hall. Just bubble and run through it. Steve, the holy blessing of the most gorgeous and wonderful of gods is not just a bubble. Don't care! Less talk, more bubble! Steve shouted as Larry grumbled but ran ahead of the group as a golded shield enveloped him. As he ran through the hall, various blades and spikes shot up from the ground, walls and ceiling, and all splintered and smashed themselves on the cleric's divine protection, which made it easy for the rest of them to run along behind him. Once they were at the far side, Steve stopped. You guys go on. I'll be right there. Turning back, he quickly crushed up several ingredients in his hands and mashed them together as he cast a minor time reversal spell to reset the traps in the hall to their regular state. But as the flash of magic settled through the hall, Steve found himself back on the wrong side of the traps, since he'd reset himself at the same time. Oh, shit! He ran forward then and raised his hand in the air. Blink! He teleported forward 20 feet, and as a giant blade swung down from the ceiling, he jumped forward, rolling as he hit the ground only to spring back up with his hand in the air. Blink! And as he poofed forward once more, he found himself past the traps. Time magic is such a headache, he muttered as he ran through the next hall to catch up with the rest of his group. He found them standing in a bare room with a door at the far side, and above it, etched into the wall, it said, Overthinking. Steve, what's the trick? Sherry asked. I've checked for traps. Larry's been trying to divine the place, and Fenrina can't smell anything amiss. Whatever sort of magic is guarding this place, it must be powerful. I can't figure out where it is, man. This is one seriously bad trap room, and I mean bad as in good. Yeah. They all looked at Steve as he stepped forward, and while they all watched him, he opened the door at the far end. There's nothing in here. You're all overthinking it. Let's go. He waved them through as they all looked a bit disappointed that the trap was, in fact, all in their heads. Steve entered last and shut the door behind him as he heard the sounds of traps being smashed further up the hall. Crap was close behind, but now they were in the tomb of Vauclair. The warlock's sarcophagus was before them on a stone slab. Is there supposed to be more? Sherry asked as she looked around the room. Well, normally we'd have to worry about the lava trap, but since the volcano is dormant, that's not an issue. Help me with the lid, he said as he crossed the room to start pushing on the lid of the sarcophagus. But as Fenrina leaned in to help, they heard a loud click and a rumbling sound. Steve paused as they looked up at a chute that opened above them, and steam came pouring out for a moment as Steve backed up. But then there was a soft puff, and the rumbling stopped before the group groaned and squinted. Ow, rotten egg butt smell, Fenrina whined as she clutched at her sensitive nose. That's sulfur, but whatever. The lid. Steve pressed through the awful smell to get the lid off. Fenrina whined but helped him heave it off as he looked down at the mummified remains of Vauclair, the scroll clutched in his degraded hands. Well, you were a real piece of shit in life, but at least this will go to good uses, Steve said as he grabbed the scroll. But when he tried to pull it out, to his surprise, the mummy seemed to pull it back in. He let go in shock and jumped back, but the remains didn't come to life. With a frown, he reached in again and tried to pull the scroll free, but it seemed to fight him. So he set one foot on the side of the sarcophagus and yanked and pulled. Let go! Let go, you miserable dead asshole! The arms of the long-dead warlock finally snapped, sending Steve tumbling back since he'd been pulling on it with such force, but once he stopped rolling, he jumped back up to his feet. "I've got it!" Which was when the door behind them was smashed, as Arturian charged through it covered in protective runes. "Ah, whatever traps there are won't stop me!" But as he skidded short and looked around, nothing happened, and the runes faded away. "The door was open, idiot! No traps, not even a lock!" Steve called out as the other members of Crap filed in behind their leader. "This ends here, necromancer!" Arturian shouted, and pointed his sword at Steve. "You better fight me like a man this time! No more running, coward!" "I have a better idea! Fenrina gets sickum!" He pointed, as the werehusky growled and launched herself at the paladin. She might be younger and less experienced, but Steve had taught her some very key tricks to fighting. "Go for the eyes, Fenrina! Go for the eyes, and then the balls! That's how you win!" he called out. "Protect me while I cast this!" As Stephen opened the scroll to start reading, the fight got underway all around him. He dodged a quick volley by Arisha as Sherry lashed out with her whip to distract the ranger, and then Larry and Fortin squared off as the two clerics began to shout holy verses at one another, and then just beat on each other with their hammers in what Steve had come to call a holy poetry slam. But that meant Quarry, their mage, was there to deal with Steve as he tried to cast the ancient scroll. However, since he was busy casting, he couldn't use his own spells to counter hers. The first attack was easy for him to deal with, however, as she raised her staff and prepared to cast a lightning bolt at him. And he just stood there and took it, his belt absorbing the electricity before firing it out all around him as it dissipated. "Of course the gods try to smite you so much you never go anywhere without your belt, do you? Heathen villain!" the elven mage shouted at him while he just gave her a one-finger salute in return as he kept chanting. Next, she began to wave her hands as he expected a barrage of magical bolts to sail straight at his position. But just before she finished casting, he tossed a smoke bomb on the ground, and in the flash and following smoke, he simply ran behind the sarcophagus, letting the bolts fly harmlessly overhead or slam into the side of the stone. "Just stand up and fight!" The other mage cried out as she got closer to make it harder for him to dodge. When he saw the shards of ice form around the tip of her staff, he waited for her cast to be nearly complete and then grabbed a pepper from one of his pouches and tossed it into his mouth as he chomped down on it. The cone of frost overtook his body, encasing him in ice as Quarry grinned in victory. Right before his body steamed and the ice shattered as he let out fiery breath thanks to the magic pepper he'd just devoured. And then even crying and dripping snot from the spicy pain of the pepper he kept casting. Just, die!" she shouted, and this time he noticed the white-hot aura that began to form around her hands, the disintegration beam. He was too close to dodge it, the stone wouldn't shield him, none of his vials or ingredients could counter it, and he couldn't cast a counter without stopping his chant of the scroll of catastrophic ultimate death. So he did the only thing he could, advancing on her as he aimed just past her head and leaned into it as he let his fist fly forward, twisting as he extended and punched her in the face. The elven mage cried out her spell stopped as she got punched in the face and even dropped her staff as she stood there and began to cry. The others stopped fighting then as Steve finished casting the scroll and a wave of energy washed over them for a moment before nothing. The room was quiet now aside from Quarry crying as she held her face. "Yay, you hit me! You were about to disintegrate me," Steve gasped out. "Why do I even feel bad? You were going to kill me, turn me into ash. All I did was punch you. You got off light compared to what you were just literally trying to do to me." "Well, your evil plan failed," Arturian said, but was unable to strike a heroic pose as he was trying to rub the dirt out of his eyes that Fenrina had thrown in his face during the fight. "We're still alive." "What? I wasn't using this to kill you. That would be a huge waste. The scroll of catastrophic ultimate death wasted on you four?" Steve snorted as the two adventuring groups began to pull apart and cluster back up, with Quarry sniffing and conjuring a snowball to hold to her face. But, the goddess told us you were out to kill the most faithful of servants of the divine gods," Aricia mentioned. "What?" Steve frowned. "I used it to kill mosquitoes." The room was quiet then, aside from Quarry whimpering. "What mosquitoes? Arturian finally asked as he looked around. All mosquitoes! All mosquitoes everywhere! They all just burst into flames and died! They're all gone! Forever! No more mosquitoes! Steve shouted. Did you think I was here to kill you guys? That would be a huge waste of this scroll. Either your goddess lied to you again, or she thinks mosquitoes are the most loyal servants of gods. But that's not really evil? Arturian frowned, now seeming confused. I'm not evil! How many times do I have to explain that? Steve let out an annoyed cry. But you raised hellweeds and the dead! Arturian pointed at him. I tried to warn the people about my magic garden and I didn't raise the dead. I just used a little harmless life magic to animate the bodies and asked those souls to come back to see their grandkids. Don't you get it? I'm not evil. Every time we meet, you guys try to straight up murder me and that's on you, not me. Look, I'm even sorry I punched Quarry in the face, but she was about to kill me. Can't you understand that and just let this all go? What's the point of all this? There is no good magic or evil magic. It's all just magic and what you do with it. And I might annoy you guys, but I don't get all the hate. Could it just be that you're angry I'm a human who's good at magic? That you don't understand me and hate me over something silly and trivial, and if you just 2 seconds to think about it, you'd see I'm right? I mean, I don't even try to kill you guys back. Steve asked then and sighed a bit, as figured the rivalry between them was pointless anyway. Arturian and the others seemed to consider this for a moment, and Steve had a moment of hope that this feud would finally be over. No, you tricked us with that dragon shit, and that time you gave us the runs. You're evil, I know it, and you couldn't kill us if you tried, so you don't waste you evil, cowardly, villainous breath. You have a villain's goatee, and a villain's cowardice, and other villains in your party. We are the forces of pure righteousness and good, and we shall smite you. I am a hero. I have a hero's jawline. Steve just glared as the other ruggedly handsome human struck a pose, and in the enclosed room deep in the side of a mountain somehow had a breeze pick up to wave his cloak behind him heroically. Oh, fuck you, Steve growled, and you're bad at magic. Everyone knows it, Quarry shouted back, obviously still upset about the punch. I'm great at magic. I'm amazing at it. You'd know that if you talked to my professors. Oh, wait, you can't. 'Cause you got banished for trying to fucking murder me on school grounds, and I could so kill any of you if I wanted. You think you're so clever and I'm stupid, but guess what? I don't need to do anything sneaky to kill you, poison your food, or attack you in your sleep. You all expect that kind of thing since you've made so many enemies by being assholes. Well, I'd kill you by doing something so fucking dumb and obvious that it's brilliant, and there wouldn't be anything you can do about it. Like, drop a really big, huge rock on you. Yeah, huh? What could you do about that? Nothing. As he said that, everyone gave Steve an odd look. A big rock? Your plan is to drop a big rock on us? Arturian asked as he arched a perfectly groomed eyebrow. That was just an example. I'll make up my own magic for it or something. You'll see. It'll be a really big rock. And it's like so big you can't dodge it, and so heavy you can't stop it. Steve waved his hands as he felt the conversation was getting away from him. Yeah, right, you're a terrible mage. You'll never make your own cantrip, let alone real magic, Quarry shouted back. Fuck you! Yes, I will! It'll be human magic, the school of throwing big rocks and maybe other stuff at people and dropping it on them, Steve growled as the members of Crap all laughed at him then before Arturian pointed his sword. Enough! Now hand over the scroll, vile ruffian, for it belongs in the hands of loyal servants of the gods! Arturian demanded. It belongs in a museum, Steve shouted back. Plus it's useless now, you moron. Whatever. Let's go, everyone. And how do you plan on getting past us? Arturian asked, but Steve just shrugged. Magic? And he clapped his hands, having been preparing the spell in his head before he and the rest of Doom vanished from sight, teleported back to the safety of Orbitus. I think that went pretty well, Steve said as he looked around the others now that they were safe. All the mosquitoes are dead. That's a win for us. Did you have to punch that elf girl in the face? Sherry asked, as she gave Steve a look who just gasped out. Where do I even start? First of all, she's not a girl, she's like in her mid-120s. Second, she was about to straight up murder me. Third, yes, I did. Sherry shrugged after a moment. So long as all the mosquitoes are dead. Now what do we do with the scroll? she asked. Like I said, we put it somewhere safe, Steve explained. It'll be another 500 years, give or take a decade, before it's ready to be used again, but we don't need to tell people that. We can just let them think it's done for good and hope no one ever finds out. Or you tell the Archdean, because if you don't, I will. Sherry replied, which made Steve stick his tongue out at her. Spoils the mystery, he complained, but as Sherry continued to glare at him, he sighed. Fine, I'll tell her. And I'm also going to ask for permission to start up a new school of magic. Thankfully, the Archdean helped Steve change his original proposal from the school of throwing big rocks and other stuff at people and also dropping heavy things on them too, into the much more succinct school of kineticism. In a few decades' time, she'd also help him rename his ultimate spell of the big, really giant, heavy rock that crushes things, into the now infamous meteor spell. You know, should we be concerned about the environment? We just completely erased a component of the ecosystem from the world entirely. What impacts will this have on the natural balance of the food chain on a local or even global scale? The others looked at Fenrina for a moment before Steve shrugged. Don't know. Don't care. I just wanted to kill all mosquitoes, he replied. Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Death to mosquitoes, Sherry said next. Nothing worse than taking your special lady out by the lake or the beach and trying to lay her down by the fire when you've got to deal with mosquitoes, honey child. You know this reminds me of a song. But before Larry could go on, Fenrina spoke up again. Well, I guess nature has survived other extinctions. I'm sure this will be fine. Historians would long debate if it was indeed fine or not. One thing that for certain came about was the vast decline in the spread of disease and plague around the world, which in turn meant life mages began to fall out of favor, since there was less need for specialists to cure those very diseases. In turn, this meant humans had to look to more mundane solutions, and the advancement of medicine was greatly influenced by this turn of events. Though no member of Doom had any idea, this would be one major side effect of their mission. Now let's go get some victory cake, Fenrina suggested, and the others were happy to agree as they went in search of said cake. It would be weeks before they would achieve this goal after a series of unforeseen events derailed their attempts at culinary triumph, would be derailed by the forces of the gods and Lady Luck and their brief run-in with an evil mimic cake. But they would eventually arrive at their goal. And yes, I do speak, of course, of the legendary Cake of Doom. This, of course, is a story for another time.